my first step ever podcast, and I am Ishani Nigam, your host and producer of the podcast. This podcast is made for all the disruptors around the globe who know that they are made for something, for that one thing, but fear of embarrassment, fear of rejection, the fear of fear itself holds us back at some point in time. But hey, those are the only milestones that if we cross, we are there to take our first steps. So, welcome on this journey with me where I interview people from across the globe so that they can share their story, their challenges, and you know that even you can surpass yours. Well, what are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome on my first step ever. This is quite an episode because this is one of those episodes where we have invited one of our guest speakers for the very second time because of the promise that he had and also the caliber he has and the experiences that he has that he shared, that we couldn't really cover everything in the first chat that we had. I'm talking about David Petrovay all the way from US. Now, David, we went on his journey of how he really found himself, how many different professions he had to try, he had to kind of experiment what he really liked and how things did not turn up the way he wanted early on in his life. But what led to him discovering who he is today is all that we have discovered in that episode. So I will put the link below in the show notes, so do check out for the context that who we are speaking to if you have not heard that one. And this one is going to be extremely special because it's going to be different from the usual episodes. David came up with this amazing topic that he wanted this to be heard by many out there because he has felt the impact of that, and that is how to create a dream life. Thank you so much, David, for suggesting this topic and taking the time out to do this with us. So before we begin, I like to again give a sneak peek about who David is if you're listening it for the very first time. But before that, David, welcome on my first step ever.
Well, thank you for having me, Ishani. It's just a pleasure to be on the podcast with you.
Likewise, and I love that smile of yours and that energy of yours. But we will keep it a really chill, cool chat today. Just, you are going to tell me and a lot of listeners that how you created your dream life, and we are just going to listen to you that how and why it worked out for you. And maybe in that process, we might get something to also, implement, and execute on our end as well. So there was a little direction provided in David's early years in guiding his career. And following 34 years as an educator of the blind in 2018, he founded his company, David Petrovay Coaching, based on his slogan, I help people figure out what they are here to do in life and then do it. During his 25 years as a career counselor and coach, he has worked with individuals and groups to do just that. His clients are professionals across a broad spectrum of work settings who are motivated to be the best at what they do. Now, that is so cool to be able to be that person to enable other people do what they're best at. He has presented to groups on national, state, and local level on work-related topics such as communication, creating attention and resumes and LinkedIn profiles, and the challenges facing those who are seeking employment. He's a published author with his most recent book, Out of Work, Not Out of Worth, Navigating the Emotional Side of Loss, receiving #1 bestseller badge. Now, if we have someone so profound in our studios for the very second time, I feel really honored. And without wasting a time, let's just dive into this because I'm eager to know, David, that how to create a dream life. So to begin with, I do remember that you said that realizing that a dream life is different for everyone on the other side of things. So we can start then thinking about the dream life.
And I think it begins with awareness. That's always the first step to a change. Am I aware that there is something going on in my life that is keeping me from living my dream? And usually it's a pretty basic belief, Ishani. Like just saying, I'm not worthy or I don't deserve. That's pretty simple. And that's where we start with questioning. That's where it's important to go within and begin to probe. what that message was and how it affected my life. And do I want to continue living my life with that limiting belief? Or can I expand and say, as you were talking about the I am, I'm not good enough. Oftentimes, that's really someone giving us the message, you're not good enough, because they didn't believe that they were good enough. So they were simply projecting their limiting beliefs onto you, most likely as a child, and then you internalize those because these were people who were supposedly well experienced, well versed in life, and they knew what they were talking about. Well, they were only sharing their perspective. And so what you have to do is identify where those messages came from. And what I learned to do was to give those messages back to them. That was your story. It doesn't have to be mine.
Amazing.
So that's one way to begin to release yourself from all of that keeps you from being what you're here to do.
Wow, this is, I mean, I think a lot of us keep reading about a lot of things which is related to, subconscious mind, because at this point in time, it's quite prevalent out there. But I think, David, it's really nice that you've shown up today and you've given your time so that we can understand that in your personal context. Because when you understand something in someone's life and their examples, how it really helped them. Because what I liked, what you just mentioned, David, is that how you tackle that first is that you accept, it's the awareness. Okay, you are going through something and you need to figure something out to work on. The second thing is to find ways to work it out. And I like that how you've mentioned that you simply go and tell that other person, or you don't even have to go and tell that person, but know that that's their story. It's fine, it's their story, but that's not who I am, that's not my story. I love this. When you say that to yourself, it takes a lot of pressure off you, because it's not that you're negating that someone else is saying. It just you're just flipping it and saying, okay, what you said I understand, but maybe that's coming from your own experiences. That doesn't mean it's about me. It's not about me. So that's very exciting, David. And once that happened for you in your journey, how did things started shifting for you to the beautiful side of the life where you then started thinking of, oh, then how do I create my dream life? How were you introduced to this concept? So here's your story, how that happened for you. So my very first question to you, David, is how do you turn your dreams into a reality?
Well, I think even before we get to that question, Ishani, it's, do I deserve to have a dream life? Because I think until you get to that point, it won't show up for you. Because you will figure out ways to sabotage that if you don't believe that you deserve it. Well, that works for other people, but it would never work for me. And we'll come up with all kinds of excuses to not live that dream life. I think it's when you're willing to let go of those limiting beliefs that things truly begin to change for you. So we have to look at that. Do I deserve it? Am I worthy enough?
That's a very good context to start with. So I think I'll start from that perspective itself. So in your journey, when did that start happening for you? When did that start in your journey when you realized that probably I'm self-sabotaging myself, or maybe you did not do that, but you were still yet to, be open to receiving, to have that dream life journey? Just it was on the brink of beginning, but before that we would love to know that where were you before that?
So it's really interesting how synchronicity works, because right before this, I was watching video that is about, what keeps you from living that dream life. And I found that the answer for me was, I'm not worthy to do this. And so the person who was presenting it said, you need to go back to your childhood, probably the first 5 years of your life, and revisit where that message would have come from. And I mean, it was very clear to me, even though that was 70 years ago.
Wow.
that I didn't live in an environment that encouraged worthiness. There was always a dismissive statement that went with whatever I did. And of course, you begin to internalize that. And subconsciously, that's the script that you live out. And oh, that would be wonderful, but I'm not worthy. I don't deserve that. And so you pass up these wonderful opportunities based on that. So I think that for many of us, it's important to go back to revisit what those messages were that keep us from living a dream life. Because once we get to the point where we say, I deserve that, it begins to happen.
Wow, David, I think that definitely makes a lot of sense until and unless you unlearn certain things or you address certain challenges in your head. And it all starts with a thought and a belief. Yes, that's so true. If I think I've experienced that personally in my life, being put myself in the same situation but with two different mindsets. So a couple of years ago, if I was in the same situation with a different mindset of, oh no, not me, I don't think so, I can do this, I'm not experienced enough. So I obviously couldn't make it. But now I feel that I'm in the same situation and I'm like, I think I can because I've got the relevant experience, I feel. And I think and I realize this is such a small thing about just the thought process, whether you have experience or not, whether you believe in yourself that you can create something out of it. I think it really works. And a very small another example of this is like the day before I when I sleep, and if I tell my mind, that, oh, I have to wake up at 5:30 tomorrow morning, I actually wake up without the alarm. And when I don't tell myself, I do not wake up at 5:30, which is, so that's when I started realizing this. So it's a small example of that, but I love the fact that we have started from the very beginning, and the very first steps of actually creating a dream life is to first understand if you are holding anything back in your mind, in your heart. And usually it goes down to someone's childhood or some trauma, even
Mhm.
teenage, that you have gone through and you have not addressed that fully, you have not healed from that fully. So David, can you take us through that? What are the ways that someone can probably address these if they are yet not kind of over that trauma or over that limiting self belief? How can one go
Well, probably through an understanding of concepts like the law of attraction and what we really deserve in life and how we can attract that. And so that became my focus for what would my dream life be? What is it that I enjoy doing in life that brings me satisfaction and fulfillment? And so that's what led me to the work I do today as a career coach, an author, a speaker. It's helping others to begin to understand the value that they bring just by being here.
David, I like to draw some parallels. Like, at what point in your story? Because we all, at least I, because we had a conversation in our previous episode. And for the ones who have yet not checked that, please go and check that so that you know that how David's journey panned, that the different professions that he thought that he really would want to, be and shine in that profession. As and when he experimented, he realized, oh, he's good at that, but that is not something that he likes. And then finally, he chanced upon psychology and he started teaching, learning, and then he came into the business of coaching. So that's like an overview. So
Mhm.
along this journey, when you said that you were introduced to the concept of law of attraction, and then that's when things started changing for you realized that you're holding some past trauma. When was that happening in your at the point in your journey, like before you came across psychology and started learning and became a teacher, or was it before that? If you can just give us a bit of an idea.
Well, to put it in a chronological context, I would say that this part of my journey began around the age of 33. And
Wow.
that was when I was introduced to a program. And the key there is programming. Okay. It was teaching me how to reprogram my thinking and to realize that I was worthy, that, that what I was wanting to accomplish was doable, and that there were people who could support that. And I think that's also an important component of it, Ishani, is when I talked about being at the age of 5, I was not surrounded by people who supported my goals. And then when I entered into this new world, it was like, you could do anything. And recognizing that I had strengths and talents and I needed to be using those. And as I did that, I really felt this sense of transformation. And it was exciting. I now had a pathway to follow, and I did. And because when I find something that works, I'm dedicated to it. And in doing this for many years, it began to open up new doorways for me. So that was at the point where I said, I've always wanted to work with people. And so one way that I could do that is to get a degree in counseling, which I pursued and completed. And then I decided the next step for me was to get a doctorate. Now, there are not too many people in my family who have doctorates. So what I was really doing was breaking those barriers of the self-limiting beliefs that my parents imposed on me, because what I learned through my conversations with them was, although education was important, they did not pursue it. And they were both very intelligent people. My mother lived her life as a housewife. My father lived his life as, a mail carrier. But that was far from their potential. And I heard their regrets by not pursuing it. And that's when I absolutely said to myself, that's your story. It's not mine. And when I did that, I completed both of those degrees at the University of Arizona, and I was working full time, and I maintained a 4.0 average the entire time I was in school. And that said a lot about breaking the barriers, because I had to be worthy enough to do that. And of course, there were times where I thought to myself, anybody could do this, but that's not true. Okay. Not very many people have PhDs.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was one of them. Also, my family didn't travel. Okay. They would just do maybe trips within the state. And here I am. I've been all over the world. And next week, from the time that we're recording this, I'm on my way to the British Isles, because that's one of my other dreams, is to visit all over the world and get to know people from all different cultures. Because I find when I do that, we're all more alike than we are different.
It's really interesting to know their journey step by step. And I think putting context in your life to what the questions that we're asking and how you change things for you, it's really the step of, I think once you keep experimenting a lot in your life and still you don't find a way, I think it's a good point to realize that probably you're not able to find yourself. It's more about that. And that's what and I could actually, I could definitely relate with your story, because I've experimented a lot in my early 20s and even late 20s. And I also didn't find that, what am I, what's the kind of life that I'm looking at? What will I be really enjoying? And it's exciting to know that the age of 30, that's when started things started changing for you, and you were still open for an idea of change. Because I think age is taken in a very weird way these days, because a lot of people, which is a great thing, a lot of people are able to figure out life even at as early as 20s, early
Right?
20s, at 20, at 21, they're doing well for themselves, and a lot of people in their late 20s, so they've sorted their life. So people start feeling, oh my god, I just completed my 20s. I'm just starting off my 30s. I'm in my late 30s. I haven't done as much what other people are doing. Their life is sorted. They know what they're doing. It's too late to figure out my life. I think these conversations are kind of bringing a lot of fear, and that you haven't been able to make it in time. Age is being discussed a lot these days in those terms, that at certain age you must be this and you must be that. But unfortunately, if it has not been clear for a lot of individuals that what they would like to do, what they would want to do, it's because maybe they are still dealing with certain things, certain limiting beliefs that they have been telling themselves, that every time they take a step to do what they really feel like, but they are not able to. It could be because of all these reasons. And I like that how you started off, questioning yourself, that, and the first step of saying, okay, that is your story, but here is my story. So when you start building, you've shared some really interesting questions to me, so I like to kind of ask a few of those. So now I'd like to come back to the question that I asked at the very beginning, because now we have some context. Like, how do you then turn your dreams into a reality? What are the actionable, concrete steps, David?
Well, I think part of it is identifying what those components of that dream are. And, what would that look like in my life? And how would I feel in doing these? I think that's an important component of it, is the feelings, because they will help you to determine if this is something that you want to continue to pursue, or to say, you know what, I'm glad I tried it, but I don't think I'll repeat it. That was enough for me. It's like going through, a buffet line, and there are all these choices in front of you. And you try a little of this and a little of that, and you go, oh, that tasted delicious. I think I'll have more of that, versus I tried it. No, once was enough. So I think that's also the way we need to look at our own lives and say, all right, this is an opportunity, especially when you're young. I really encourage people to sample life. There are certain cultures where they do that, and they seem to be happier because they've tried these things out early. And for me, things are coming later in life. But you were talking about the age piece of it. There'll be certain things that you can't do just because of how the human body works. But for the most part, when it comes to the mind, I think that the mind is always wanting to expand and to learn more, just like you've done in the work that you do, Ishani. And so right before this, I signed up for another class. Okay. And I'm excited about it.
Amazing.
And it's about how to actually release limiting beliefs to become even more of what you're here to do and be.
Incredible.
Yep. So you're never too old for that. I think that's another limiting belief that people have is, oh, I'm too old to do that. Now, I don't absolutely believe that. When it comes to the mind, the more you do to expand the mind, the healthier you become.
Yes, and I like that you have mentioned some facts about that, that yes, there are certain things that you might not be able to do with age. But when it comes to your mind and the learning attitude and upgrading yourself, I think that is limitless and endless. And it's exciting to know, David, that you have signed up for another class, a concept that you're already well versed with and you've been practicing, but you yet want to reinforce, relearn
Yeah.
new techniques, or maybe practice that again for yourself, redo it for yourself. This is such a great inspiration, David. So kudos to you for doing that. I'm very excited to see how you take life as in a way of curiosity, that you want to keep learning things and relearning things. Wow, this is amazing. And I always see that it is just not the smile, but I think there's some glow in your eyes, the twinkle in your eyes, the glow on your face, whatever situation it may be or you may be in. I can always see it. It's like a godlike light. So just thank you so much for sticking through with me and my listeners today, taking us through your journey and also parallelly telling us that how to create a dream life. I started off with this question, and now we are wrapping up with this question because it made me realize that that's not the very first question you begin with. It's the very first question you begin with is like, what is your current situation? Are you self-sabotaging yourself? Have you been trying enough, but you're not able to really, get out of your mindset? Maybe because you have some limiting beliefs. So it's about sitting with yourself, kind of being aware with it. If you need some help, take some help for that and work on it, and start with as simple as being aware, accepting, and then going and either saying it or saying it to yourself that that was someone else's story. This does not need to be true for you. Then you write your own beliefs, your own stories. That's the third step. And then we come back to, I would like to kind of ask you the few more questions. I want to leave our listeners with a few questions, and those are the questions that my friend David has shared with us, and that has helped him through his life. And I'd also like to tell them that why this is so important, because David has really been, in the past couple of years, he's actually designed his life in certain way that he did tell me that he has some really amazing bucket list, which he writes down, and he's been constantly on that go of ticking those off. So that means that what he's saying and what his experience has really worked out for him. So here are a few questions that David left me with, and I want to leave you with is, first of all, how do you turn your dreams into reality? This is how it begins. What would that reality look like for you, and how would you feel? Note that question down. The second is, what would hold you back from turning your dreams into a reality?
Mhm.
And third, what could you do to change that belief? Now, this I would personally feel is not something like, can be done in an hour or 2 days or 3 days or a week. It could be a more of an evolving process, and it might take time, turns, a lot of discussions with your own self to begin with, and with maybe some near and dear ones, or maybe some person that you have really no idea about, or maybe who has the grasp of this technique. So, yeah, this is what I want to leave you guys with. And David, before we take your leave, is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners today?
I think one of the most important pieces of it, Ishani, is to let go of the how. How is this going to happen? Because believe me, when I look at my 101 wishes list, I shoot for the stars and I let go of, well, how is this going to happen? It does. And it will happen in the strangest ways. So there were things that were planned. For instance, there was a trip that we were supposed to make with friends to Alaska to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. Had all of the tickets all set to go, and the wife could not get her passport approved. So she had tried for 2 years to get that to happen, and they wanted to, return the monies that we had put down. We said, no, we still want to move ahead with this. Well, when we shared it with our travel agent, she said, oh, going to Alaska, well, that is like top of the list for all these people, but it wasn't for us. It was not on the list. She said, how about if we exchange those tickets and send you to Europe instead at no extra cost? So we flew first class to Europe and stayed in 5-star hotels and did a cruise through the Baltic. And guess what? Not the majority, but a number of my wishes were related to that. So see how the
Incredible.
universe took care of that? And I have so many stories about things that just seemed unexpected. And all I had to do was put it out there and say, this is important to me. And let's see what happens.
Wow, I have goosebumps right now. And I know that we discussed a couple of your exciting stories last time as well. And I'm glad that we could bring one up today for our listeners as well, just to kind of understand what you mentioned is, I think, the key to everything, the how. The how is what our brain gets stuck in, and then we really give up on things even before we start, because we like, how the hell will this even happen? I don't know anyone, I'm not from that industry, or I'm not in that country, or I don't have the skills. How will that happen? Oh my god, that is such that I think this is the only make or break question that can, if people leave the how, I think they can start with the journey of letting go the limiting belief, because the reason we keep on to the limiting belief is like, how will that even happen if I start thinking about that thing that I really want to? So you have wrapped up this episode on such an invaluable and important note and such a great insight. Thank you so much, David. I always request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that they resonate with. If you may please, I would be very happy if you could share something with our listeners again today.
So while I don't see myself as a religious person, I certainly see myself as a spiritual one. And one quote that I heard a number of years ago that always resonates with me, Ishani, is God wastes nothing. So everything that you have done in your life has had a reason for getting you to where you are today. Now, you can accept that and live with it, or you can say, you know what? There's more out there for me. I don't know exactly how it's going to show up. That's none of my business. But I just need to be open based upon the experiences that I've had and how I can share that with others. So I think that's the big one. 3 words: God wastes nothing.
Incredible. Thank you so much, David. I am left with this amazing thought that it's not my duty to think how, but it's about first creating that belief in myself that this is what I want. And then you go on figuring things out in life. And it will show up, and it will you will get support from some places, or something will show up in a way that will propel you to your dreams. So thank you, David.
Yeah, and Ishani, as you experience these small successes, recognize them as messages that you are an incredibly wonderful person and that you deserve all that life has to offer, not just the crumbs. You deserve the feast.
This is going to be the title, I would say. You deserve not just the crumbs, but the feast, by David Petrovay. So thank you so much, David, for being on my first step ever. I really, really appreciate that you showing up, having a very tight week and a very challenging week as well. So this speaks a lot to me. You have inspired me in many ways that I can't even say that how important it is to show up for things. So thank you so much.
You're quite welcome, Ishani.
Please do give ratings and please do write your comments, and you can directly reach out to me on my first step ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.